In this video, we're going to go over Canadian specific issues for those going through the immigrant visa process, getting a green card, whether in the United States, adjustment of status, or through the embassy consular processing. Canadians have unique issues related to their ability to be visa exempt, entering the United States, and tracking that entry with regard to specific documents from Canada, processing through the embassy, and much more. So we're going to go through all these, and we'll try to do timestamps so you can jump around to get the part where that affects you. But these are really important things that come up when we do green card case for Canadians, which is something we do a lot. I'm in Los Angeles, California headquarters. Obviously, a lot of Canadians are traveling over here all the time. So we help them through this process on a day-to-day basis, whether they marry a U.S. citizen and they're living in Canada, or they find work in the United States and want to do an employment-based green card. They had a TN, H-1B, all the like. So let's start first and foremost by the number one unique issue to Canadians, which is them being visa exempt. So that means the Canadians do not normally need to get a visa to enter the United States. Other countries in Europe, for example, could have visa waivers. That's different from being visa exempt, and this helps out a lot in different unique circumstances that pop up. Typically, they only need to go to the embassy for getting either a green card, a thing called the E2 investor visa, a fiancé visa K1, and sometimes like a B1, B2 tourist visa if you have particular issues that prevents you from being able to enter the United States at the pre-clearance station at the border. This is the U.S. Customs Office that's in Canada at various airports there to be able to enter. That they could. It's usually not needed for Canadians, but there are numbers of people that do request a tourist visa. Now, one of the issues that comes up is if you're coming by land from Canada, if you're entering by land, you're not going to have what's called a Form I-94 record of entry issued. This is a formal kind of document. Now it's online. It used to be a thing they would staple in your passport, but it shows the day that you enter the United States and how long you could be here. So the problem with that is if you're going to end up doing adjustment of status for some reason, for example, you drive in, and then you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and 4, 5, 6 months later, you propose and decide to get married to stay in the United States, having a record of lawful entry in the United States is not going to be there. And that becomes a little bit complicated because how do you prove it? Now, on the website where you have the I-94, there'll be a travel history option. Sometimes it's recorded there. Other times, you might have records from the Customs Border Protection of the Canadian side. We can request a FOIA request to do, or have other ways to show it. Being Canadian, inevitably there's a way to find to do it, and the government usually accepts it because they know you don't need a visa to enter, so you probably didn't illegally enter. You had lawful entry, which is one of the requirements for doing adjustment of status, filing for a green card in the United States. Now, one side note is that sometimes Canadians come and they overstay the typical 6 months on a tourist visa. If you came on land and a I-94 was not issued, a formal entry was not issued, there was a memo that was released years ago that said they don't hold that against the overstay, against the Canadian, and subject them to a 3 or 10-year bar for someone who overstayed. But if a situation like that pops up, you really need to talk with the immigration attorney in private to see if it applies for you and what's happening, because obviously there's a lot of Canadians who come frequently to the United States back and forth. And one issue that comes up with that is eventually Customs Border Protection at the pre-clearance station will start getting suspicious and start asking you, hey, are you working in the United States? Why are you going there so much? Do you have a house there? What's the reason are you going? Are you going to stay, or are you violating your status a certain way? That's why you want to prevent and not just come, have long visits and frequently coming here, because these problems could come up in the future, and accusations of fraud, misrepresentation, unauthorized employment, all that kind of stuff could pop up. Now, dual intent is a concept that pops up as well. Typically, if you're Canadian visiting the United States, you're showing intent to be a visitor, and that's it. You don't have other intent to stay here, immigrants, and come permanently. And they're pretty flexible on that. They usually don't call out Canadians, but there are options where there are times where they will. But you may come in here on what's called a TN visa. A TN visa is a special permit, a work permit that's for Canadians, particularly Canadians and Mexicans. But for Canadians, they could go show up the border and come to the United States. Now, TNs are not dual intent. Now, there's a different kind of work visa called the H-1B, which is dual intent, which says you could come as a temporary worker in the United States and at the same time have the intent to come permanently. That's authorized for H-1Bs and a visa called the L visa, but not for TN. So sometimes you'll be entering on a TN, and then subsequently their employer, for example, says, I want to apply for a green card for you. That is possible to do, but the TNs usually are between 1 to 3 years. You may need to leave and come back again, and at that point, if a green card process is started, You may have issues re-entering, or you might not be able to leave, and so you kind of lose out on your work authorization because it expires. It gets a little messy. I don't want to get too much details, but just be aware that if you are on a temporary work visa and you decide to get a green card, or your employer wants to get you a green card, that's something you need to consult an attorney on to strategize your timing and all that kind of stuff to prevent issues of misrepresentation for what's called immigrant intent and this dual intent issue. I just wanted to touch upon that subject to be aware of it. It can pop up. The next issue we see for Canadians is regarding documents. So the easy one I could get through really quick are the birth and marriage certificates. Canada has a version of a small and short form certificate. Those are not accepted by the United States. Neither are the commemorative ones. You need the long form version of the birth certificate and marriage certificate that has all the data on it to be acceptable. Now, the other issue that pops up are the police certificates. They're issued by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP. This is a certified criminal record check. And what's important is if you're in the United States doing adjustment of status, they don't need this unless you have some sort of arrest history or criminal history. But if you're going through the embassy consular processing, you will need this document. Now, to obtain this, you must do your fingerprints for it from a local service or the RCMP approved partner agency. But when you request it, you got to request a certified criminal record check for personal use, and then have the subtype be other, and providing details right there saying a search for RCMP National Repository entire holdings. There's other formats of it: criminal record check, visa check, travel records. You can't use those. And one thing I wanted to put an asterisk on this is that, as I've been doing this for 15 years, every couple of years they change the format of what's supposed to be said on these Canadian police records. Is really obnoxious. But you just got to kind of see what the most recent one is there. And that's why having an attorney that could check and be on top of it is really helpful. That's a current format, December 2024. I'm recording this that they like, but it's something to check out to make sure you have the proper one. Two more final notes I do want to make. Canadians who are going to get their green card through the embassy have to go to Montreal. All immigrant visa interviews, green card interviews, happen in Montreal. You have to go there regardless of where you are in Canada. And right now there are delays. After the pandemic, there was a year to a year and a half average wait to get an interview with the U.S. Embassy in Montreal. But even now, it hasn't got much better, maybe 9 or 10 months. So you think Canada would be faster, but it's not. It's just as bad as a lot of like Middle Eastern countries, essentially, that have these kind of 1 year delays to get an interview after the case is documentarily qualified. So be prepared for that. And the last bonus note I want to make is that because Canadians come and go so much, if you're a green card holder, eventually when you file for U.S. citizenship, and dual citizenship is allowed, both Canada and the U.S. have a problem with it, at least as a recording of this recording, you need to, in your citizenship form N-400 naturalization application, list all the entries and exits you had from the United States internationally. And if you're Canadian, you might come and go a lot. You may not keep these records. So it's very important, as soon as you get the green card, keep a running tally of all the entries, all the exits and re-entries, arrivals, departures you've had. So that's easier to document and list when you do apply for citizenship, because we see this problem a lot with Canadians who might go 5-10 times a year, especially if they're driving back and forth, and we don't have good dates on when their entries and exits were, and that could be a hiccup that creates problems for the citizenship stage. I'm immigration lawyer John Khosravi. Again, we love helping Canadians. We help so many and want to continue helping you as well. If you want to start with our office, best thing to do is schedule a consultation. Go to our website, jqqlaw.com/contact. Fill in the initial page, and then we can schedule a video consultation to talk about the details of your case to see what's going on, how we could help you there. But I hope the information here helped get you started and